Hey, how you guys doing? So this is Neil. I just wanted to share with you guys a really cool way to change your states to go into a drop state, to drop down through platforms. Now typically, see, I can push down and jump and drop right through my platform. Typically how that would work would be that you have to do a check, and you have to, you write it in your collision. So if you're writing, I have a collision script, so you have to go and change all the collisions so that when you enter this, down and jump, that it basically turns off the collision for this, and it can get kind of complicated. I thought of a really easy way to do it. It works so good. It's so precise. It uses hardly any processing, so it's very efficient and it works excellent. And yeah, I haven't come across any bugs with it whatsoever. And this will work for any game, but you need to have a state. Well, I suppose there are other ways you can do it, but in this case, I'm gonna kind of explain how it works for a state. I'm not gonna be doing any coding and stuff like that. I'm just gonna explain how it works. So yeah, let's go ahead and get going on that real fast. So first off, you want a state machine. So if you're not familiar with how to use state machines, then you're gonna have to go learn how to do them, but once you learn how to do state machines, then this will be a really cool way to program your platforming. But even if you don't use state machine, you might still be able to think of a way to implement this into your game. Because really, let me just explain how it works. Really, all that's happening. Let's go to my drop state. This is the little piece of code you need right here. That's all you need. So if you're already familiar with how to do states and everything, the only two things you need is you need this little piece of code in that state. So this is my drop state, and you need this piece of code right here. So you need your VSP to equal your global gravity plus 1. So however you're handling the gravity for your character in a platformer, just make sure to add plus 1 to it, to your gravity. And that's absolutely necessary. You need to have that in here. This isn't necessary. This is just to create an animation when I fall down. And then you have your collision script, if you have one. In this case, collision is going to be nothing except for movement. So I happen to put my collision and movement in the same script. So in this case, this is only doing movement. All my collision is gone. There's the movement. So as you can see, the collision is here. Bunch of tile collision there. So I didn't need all that because I don't want all that. So basically what I did, what's happening here is, and I'll go back and I'll explain what I was just talking about. Go back to my drop state. Is this code is turning off my collision because it's dropping me into this state here. So once I enter into this state, there's no collision here. All there is movement. So I have movement. I have my VSP plus gravity, my VSP equals my gravity plus 1, or my VSP equals VSP plus gravity plus 1 anyway. So that is happening, and then this is happening, which is basically an alarm, which only keeps me in this drop state for 1 frame. So I'm in this drop state for 1 frame, just enough to go through. That's why I need this plus 1 on my VSP plus gravity to make sure that I get through that pixel of my platform. And then it switches me back to jump state, and my jump state has all my collision and everything. That way, once I'm through that pixel of the platform and I fall through it, I then go back into jump, and now I have the proper falling animation because that's part of my jump state, and then I'll land on whatever platform or solid is below me because the jump state takes over. So the collision in my jump state is now what takes over. If you look at my jump state, you can see that it goes to my regular collision script here. And that has all the collision for the platforms and stuff. Anyway, so the basic idea is what you're doing is you're changing to a state that turns off collision for 1 frame and speeds you up a little bit, so you fall through that 1 pixel of your platformer, and that's it. And then this is just to calculate. This is just to make sure I still get hurt if I'm falling. I wanted to make sure that this is a script that handles my HP. So my hit points, I wanted to make sure that if I am falling, I can still get hit by stuff. And then also the animation script, just to make sure that it'll play proper animations if I needed to do that. Like I said, all this is doing right here is just creating this dust above me when I fall. That's the basic idea. So if you think about it, all you're trying to do, and I'll explain what this code does in just a second, and all these numbers have to be exact. So basically what's happening is let's say I'm in my crouch state, because I can only reach this state from my crouch state and from my, that's one of the pieces of code I have to show you that's important for this to work. So I can do it from my crouch state and my crouch block state. Those are the two states I can enter into my drop state in. And this is the piece of code I have to be able to enter into the next state. So from crouch, so right now this is my crouch state. So if I'm crouching and all this is true, then I'll enter my drop state, which allows me to drop down. So two things that happen. One, if I'm pressing jump and down at the same time, so obviously I'm already pressing down because I'm in the crouch state, and then I'm jumping, so I hit the jump button. So if I'm pressing down and jump, then it will switch me to my drop state. When I go to my drop state, it's only going to keep me here for 1 frame. That's how this is an alarm basically that this is how you write alarms. It's really easy if you don't have to actually use the built-in alarms. You can just do it this way. Then it will keep me for 1 frame, and then it'll switch me back to my jump state. I'll explain what this is in a second. Then it goes back to jump state. So now I fall through the platform. Well, first I'm crouched down. Let's go through that one more time. First I'm crouched down. I hit jump and down, which changed me to my drop state. My drop state only keeps me here for 1 frame, allows me just enough time to go through the platform. Then it changes me back to my jump state. So now it looks like I'm falling, like I'm in my falling animation, my jump falling animation. And then when I hit the next platform, my jump animation. So now I'm in my jump animation, or my jump state. So now I'm in my jump state. All this code now takes over. That's why all my collisions and stuff are reactivated. So all this state does is deactivate because there's no collision. I mean, there's this collision script, but that collision script is just for movement. So my drop state has no collision. So basically what happens is from the crouch state, I enter into the drop state for 1 frame, just long enough to fall through the platform, and then it automatically puts me back into my jump state, back into a state where I have collisions again. So this is a very, very short, this state only lives for a second, just long enough to fall through the platform. I thought that's really cool. It basically turns off collisions for 1 frame, just long enough to fall through the platform, and then reactivates your collisions. That's the basic idea. So if you're not using states, you can probably still get this to work, but I don't know, if you have any sort of game with a decent amount of movement, you really want to have states to jump between, to flow between all those different movements. But so the idea then is, I'm trying to think of how you would do this if you don't have states. You would just think about it. At what point would you be able to turn off your collisions? However you have your collision working, you just want to make sure you can turn it off. So instead of states equals jump, I don't know, or whatever this state is, I'm not sure how you would do it anyway. Let's go back to crouch state really fast. I want to explain what this is doing first. Two things, like I said. One, if I'm holding jump and down, it's going to change my drop state. But there's also this if statement up here, which all this is contained inside of. So this has to be met first. What this is, and this right here, so side equals bbox bottom, you can just write bbox bottom here and here. Anyway, this is how I'm dealing with don't write this code, because this code doesn't mean anything for you unless you're using my collision. So this is how I'm testing for a platform. So however you're testing for a platform in your game versus a solid, then that's what you want to put here. So this is just saying if I'm on a platform. That's all this code means. So whatever piece of code you have in your game that tells your character whether he's on a platform or a solid, or whether he's on a death tile, or whether he's in a void, right? Then put that there. So if I'm on a platform, and but obviously it's inside that statement, if I'm pressing jump and down, then it's going to change drop states. Basically all this means is that this won't work if I'm on a solid. So if I'm standing on a solid and I push down and jump, nothing happens because of this if statement. I have to be on a platform for it to work. This platform is this word here is a macro, and if you go to my macros here, you can see a platform equals 2, and 2 is just part of my collision. So I have my cat is retardo. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, and so 2 is a platform, and that I just have it as a P, G solid or ground, D is my death tile that kills you if you land on it. Okay, so that's that. Then let's go back to the drop state, and I'll explain this little piece of code here. It's basically a timer. This right here sets the initial time for my timer. This is kind of similar to alarm 0 equals room speed divided by 16, which is much faster than, it's 3.75, right? So it changes 60 to 3.75. So 60 frames, this turns 60 frames, and because my game is running at 60 frames a second, so that's room speed. So 60 divided by 16 is going to be 3.75. That doesn't work good though, so I floor it. This means that whatever number is here, it's going to turn it to a whole number. So 3.75 becomes 3. 3.9255 becomes 3. Anything 3 point anything becomes 3. That's what floor does. Round would round it to, I think, the nearest closest one to it. Use floor. And this number is absolutely important. Make sure your room speed is 60 and that this is 16. Otherwise, this will not work for you. This is also equally important. This has to be 3. It can't be change state minus minus. This will not work if you do that. I'll explain why in just a second what has to happen here. So this is basically like the alarm equals whatever. And then this is as if you put alarm minus minus. But in this case, it's minusing 3 instead of 1. So this is, change state equals change state minus 3 is what this means. Excuse me. What this is saying is if my change state is less than or equals 0, then this is going to happen. So this right here counts down my alarm. This then checks that my alarm has counted down, and if it has counted down, then this happens. So what's happening here is, first off, 60 divided by 16, so room speed is 60. 60 frames divided by 16 is 3.75. 3.75 gets floored to 3 because it rounds down. Whatever, it just basically whatever number it is, it erases all the decimals behind it. So 3 point whatever is going to erase everything, and it becomes 3. This takes and minuses 3 every frame. 3 minus 3 is what? 0. Because it's less than or equal to 0, then it changes me to my jump state. So this literally activates for only 1 frame. For 1 frame, that's how long my alarm takes. So 1 frame. In that 1 frame of time, I need to be able to drop down. And for some reason, it has to be 1 frame. Otherwise, this just doesn't work. You can try it. You see it doesn't work. Change this to 17. It doesn't work. And that's why I needed this +1 here. Without this +1, this doesn't work either. Otherwise, it's not consistent. You might have to press the jump and down like 5 times before it finally falls. But if you do this, it works. So this propels me 1 extra pixel during this frame, which allows me to break through that pixel or 2 of my platform, so that way I could fall through it. And that's it. That's how it works. Super simple. So if you're using a different way that your game works, just think about how, that's why I wanted to explain how the logic is working, like what is actually happening. So just in case your game is working differently than mine, then you can apply the same thinking, and the same little bit of code should still work for you, because you just got to think about, all you want to do is however you want to enter into a state, or instead of states equals jump, you can say your collision turns off here. So let's say you're writing your game in a way that you can actually turn collision off and on by adding a line of code or a couple lines of code. Then you would just add that line of code here, turn your collision off, and that's it. So this would be, once this reaches 0, which it's going to do after 1 frame, then just say, instead of states equals states jump, just have this be collision for your player is turned off. And you got to make sure it turns back on again though. So make sure that after this is run, you need a way to turn it back on again. So you only need to turn it off, and then maybe if you just put it right outside the if statement and turn it right back on, that might be long enough. And make sure you have this extra propellant going downwards. So that +1 is going to push you down fast enough for this to happen. You might have to make this +2 or +3 for it to work for your game. So if this doesn't work right away, try making this +2 or +3 and see if that doesn't work. And then just make sure you turn your collision back on. And how my collision is turned back on is my jump state. See, when I enter my jump state, notice right here, this turns my collision back on, because this is saying, hey, run the collision script, and that turns my collision back on. So just make sure you have a way to turn your collision back on. And that's pretty much it, guys. All right, sorry for the long video. I think there's a lot to explain. I'm not going to go into explaining how to do a state machine and how to switch between states. It is very intimidating at first, but once you learn the basic principles, it's really easy. It's basically you have your player, and you have the you can do. I like to do enumerators. Maybe I'll just explain really quickly how it works, just in case. Who knows? Maybe this will help somebody that you maybe kind of already know how to do it, but this explanation might help somebody. So I like having enumerators. Each enumerator is going to be a number. Each of those numbers represents this word, but the code is truly just using the number. But it makes it easier to reference by word for how we write things. So whatever you write here, that's going to be the state you enter into. So I wrote states. So because I wrote states, if I want to enter into one of these states, I have to write states dot and then walk or jump, and I have to write exactly as I wrote it here. So I wrote it in all capitals, so it has to be all capitals. And so for example, let's go back to my, let's say crouch state, for example. When I'm in my crouch state, if I want to enter states drop, notice state equals states drop. And then, whatever you have for your, way to transfer between your states, whatever you have for your variable, then that's where that would be whatever. But this is what brings me to that state, to that numerator. So states dot drop, that's what brings me to there. That's why it was written that way. Now, if I would have called my numerator instead of states, I would have called it Batman. This would be Batman dot drop, right? I know it's a weird example, but I just want to make it clear. So whatever I write here, that's how I enter into the state. It's this word dot plus whatever word I have here to enter to one of these states. And that assigns a number basically. And that number allows you to go between those different things. And then now here, notice that this same number now applies. This is basically my state array. So this is basically saying state array. Let's just say this is state array 1, state array 2, state array 3, state array 4, right? Instead of having to write those numbers out, I can write states.idle, because this right here turns this to a number. So states and then .idle, now this is like 1, 2, 3, like that, right? I can't remember if this starts as 0 or not. Sometimes array, like a lot of things, numbers of frames instead of index starts at 1 instead of 0. I can't remember if this starts at 0 or if it starts at 1. It doesn't really matter. The idea is the same. So we'll just say 1. So 1, 2. So you could just write states array and then put 1 inside of here, or 0. I think it does start at 0. I think arrays start at 0, just like if you did a text array for dialogue. Then this would be 0, this would be 1, this would be 2, like that. And then 1 is going to call up this script. 2 is going to call up this script. But it's just easier for our brain to have words, so I can write the word. That way I know I'm calling up. So that way I don't have to remember 1 is idle. I can just remember idle is idle. It's easier. So that's all this means. So now I have my idle now is equal to my this has to be the exact same name as your script. And so this is a script. So you write a script. So this is basically going to bring me into my script, and then my script is going to run whatever's in my script. So if I want to enter to my walk state, then something has to tell me that states.walk is true. And then if states.walk is true, this is linked to this. So because states.walk equals my player walk state, in other words, it equals my script, then anytime this is true, anytime states.walk is true, then it means that this script is true. That's going to run that script. So if we go to state walk script, let's say I'm in idle, right? So if I'm in idle, notice if my HSP is not equal to 0, in other words, if I'm moving, I could have said if I'm pushing a button, but if I'm pushing a button, I'm obviously moving, right? If I'm pushing left or right, then my HSP is not 0. It means I'm moving. So it's just an easier way to do it. So if I'm actually moving left or right, then my state equals states.walk. And that means that what is true? My walk state, or this means that my script walk, my player walk state script is true. So now this means that it's going to change me. It's going to switch scripts, right? That's what this means. Because remember how I showed you the numerator. So now by making my HSP if not equal to 0, in other words, my HSP is equal to something, either plus 4, -4, whatever my speed is, then it's going to automatically switch me to this. And this is basically shorthand for saying bring up my script. So now I go to my walk state script. Now all this is now activated. I get my input, I calculate my movement, I make sure that if my HSP is 0, I have a way to go back into idle. So if I stop pressing, it's going to switch me back into my idle script. I have some of my collision here. That's important. I also have my collision script down here, but this is some specific things that I wanted for if I'm falling off a ledge. It basically makes it to where it makes jumping a little bit more fair. You have like a little bit of buffer to jump from platform to platform. It makes it feel better. Anyway, so and then if it's void, in other words, if there's nothing below, if there's no ground beneath my feet, there's not a solid beneath my feet, or there's not a platform. In this case, because it equals void, that means obviously it doesn't equal a depth tile, it doesn't equal a platform tile, it doesn't equal solid tile. And this means that my feet are not, there's nothing underneath my feet. And if there's nothing underneath my feet, then obviously I must be in my jump state. That is, I'm either jumping up or I'm falling down. And then, you know, attack, this is a way, this is how, so if I hit my attack button, that's what this is this goes back to my, my script for get input. I guess I can show that really quick. My get input, you can see my attack is equal to either shift, and then this right here also says it's equal to my gamepad. So I can also hit my gamepad. And that way I can just write attack in my script, so it makes it easier. So from the walk state, if I hit attack, then it's going to change me to my state's attack. Now remember, all this right here means this goes back to, this is basically calling back the enumerator, which is calling back the state array, and that state array is a number, and I can't remember what number attack was, but let's go see real quick. Starting at 0, so 0, 1, 2, 3, so it's number 3. So this basically equals 3. And so that's really all it's doing, is it's saying that if my state array number 3, which is this one, if state array 3 is true, then what is state array? Well, basically, yeah, we're just saying states array, then what does that equal? That equals this script, my attack script. So it's just a way to bring, anyway, hopefully that makes sense. So it's just saying that if my state array is 3, which is state's attack, then it's going to, and state's attack equals what again? Equals my attack script. It's going to switch into my attack script. And if I go to my attack script, player attack state, all this is now true. And so basically each state needs to be able to account for all the things that can happen to me. So you have to account for everything. So when you're in idle state, you have to be able to calculate, okay, what can all, right, idle state means you're not moving. You're standing on a solid or a platform and you're not moving. So you need to account for everything you can do, right? If you hit left or right on the D-pad, what happens? You know, well, you need to change your state to walk. So, you know, your HSP is changed. If you hit attack, what happens? You need to go to your attack state. If you hit jump, what happens? You need to go to your jump state. In this case, it goes to my jumped script. So that way I can have more than one jump. Anyways, it's just a help a double jump. You need to make sure that each state you have collision. Otherwise, if you enter that state and collision's not true, you're going to fall through the ground. You need to make sure that if you have HP, that you can get hit in each state. So everything that can happen needs to be able to happen to in each state. And you need to be able to account for everything. So if I'm in the air, what happens? In this case, if I jump, then what happens from idle? If I block, what happens? If I'm pressing down, what happens? If you have a crouch state. If something happens when you press down, then you need to be able to account for that. You need to write it. You need to write a new script, a new state for that. You don't have to write scripts. You can have all this done in one thing. It just makes it harder. You can like use regions and have them done that way. Yeah. So anyway, that's how. I don't want to describe too much more how states work. That's how states work. So hopefully that makes sense. All right. Cool. If this has been helpful to you, please do me a favor and leave a comment. I'd appreciate it. All right.